right. Let's get this out of the way first. The thoughts, views, and opinions expressed on Tailboard Talks Firefighter Podcast are solely those of the speakers, guests, and host, and do not in any way represent the thoughts or views or opinions of any other employer, partnership, or sponsor. The material and information in this podcast is for general information purposes only and should be used at the listener's discretion.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Tailboard Talks Firefighter Podcast. My name is Chris from 4th Shift Firefighter. A little bit different look for today. If you're listening on the audio version, I'm in the garage still, but I'm not really getting ready to work out. Kinda. But I got new wheels for my gravel bike. New tires, I should say. Monster tires. Enormous tires. I got 44 millimeter tires. So if you're watching on YouTube, you'll be able to see these things, these bad boys, the absolute monster trucks. If you're listening, you just got to play along a little bit. But I'm excited. I got these things. They're enormous for a road bike tire. They're supposed to be awesome. They're called Gravel. They're Tufo Gravel Funderos. Very dramatic sounding name. But if you guys have been listening to the podcast for long or following the page for long, the 4th Shift Firefighter page, I blend a lot of personal stuff in there. But I'm getting ready for this long gravel race in Lincoln, Nebraska in August. And one of the biggest things in the bike world right now, in the gravel world, is tire selection. So I'm going to mount these bad boys while we talk. It's going to be a little bit of a quick episode. And then I'm going to ride down to the pool and meet Katie and the kids there because it's a nice day. But I got to get this episode out. I got to get these tires on. So let's just do that. Before we get going, as always, if you like the podcast or like what the 4th Shift Firefighter thing is trying to do, you can always go on the website, 4thshiftfirefighter.com, number 4th shiftfirefighter.com, and hit the buy me a coffee button or buy some stickers and shirts or anything like that on there. It helps support the show. Or if you like stuff and products, I have some product affiliates that you can shop through. The first one is Rescue One CBD, 0.000 THC, safe for the job, so you can have all the benefits of CBD and none of the worry about failing a drug test. You cannot fail a drug test with Rescue One CBD. And then my second one is Fourth Frontier. They make the X2 heart rate monitoring strap. It's a chest strap that monitors your heart rate and respirations and all that, but it also is the only one in the industry that does lead to EKG. So you can look back and see lead to the entire time in case there's an anomaly or you felt weird, or you just want to see what your heart's doing while you work out. So pretty cool. Check those out. There's discount codes for both on the website. And then if you use that link, obviously I get a cut back. So thanks a lot. All right, so let's start mounting these tires. Usually, this is a nothing project. It would take about 2 minutes to do this typically, but I'm going to drag this out. It might be the world's longest wheel mount job. But I also want to talk about something specific to the fire department today. And I think it's going to resonate with new members and also old members, meaning elderly statesmen in there. And that's being critical of your department, because I don't think it's a bad thing necessarily to be critical of your department, but the way you do it can be extremely damaging or extremely helpful. And I think when most people think of being critical of your department, they think of like pointing out problems, right? Which it is. That's almost the definition of being critical of your department. But it's also just making observations. Look at that thing. Look at that wheel go. Just making observations. And I have some tips for the 0 to 5 year people, and then tips for the 10 plus, 15 plus, 20 plus year people dealing with the 0 to 5 year people, and also for them too. So like I said, it might be a quick little episode, but probably some pretty good stuff to be gotten out of this one. The rear wheel is always tricky because it's got this chain thing in the way, and I don't do it enough to put it on the right way. Also, side note about these tires, sorry for breaking the flow of this thing again, tubeless setup, which if you're anything familiar with the bike world right now, tubeless is apparently the way to go, or has been for like the past decade. It also feels like a very adult thing to do, and I didn't think I was ready for that, just because I don't act like an adult a lot of times with my stuff. I'm very bad at maintenance. I like to set it and forget it. Now, on one hand, that's absolutely a reason to go tubeless. On the other hand, it's absolutely a reason not to go tubeless. Let's divulge into a little bit of bike talk. I'm sorry if you don't like this part, but this is part of my life. So take 2 seconds here and just tell you about it. Typically, in bike tires, there's the tire and then an inner tube and then the rim, right? If you get a puncture, for whatever reason, it goes through the tire, goes through the inner tube, and then you have to either patch the inner tube and tire or replace the inner tube and put the tire back on and then risk a puncture again. The big issue with that is that I just don't want to do it. First of all, I hate changing tires. The tires on these bikes are extremely tight on the rim. They take a lot of work to get on and off. And it's just like, if I'm riding 70 or 80 miles, I don't want to stop for half an hour to screw around with a tube and a tire. So it'd be like a 20-minute job, if not more, half-hour job if it runs into any difficulty. I just don't want to do it. So tubeless is just the tire and the rim, no inner tube, and then they fill it up with like a glue type of material, like a cup of glue, and it moves around there. And if you get a puncture, and as the wheel spins, the glue gets forced to that hole, just to the outside of the rim, or outside the tire, and it fills that hole, and you may never even know you got a puncture. And then later on you can patch it or just ride with it, and it's supposed to be good forever and ever. So sorry for boring you. If you're interested in bike stuff, that was a very good little break from the monotony. If you're not interested in bike stuff, well, here we go. We're getting back to fire department stuff. So here's what I see when I think about people being critical of their department. I have no problem with it if, like I said, if you approach it the correct way. The wrong way to approach it, especially if you're a new member, is to point out things that you think are wrong. You might be like, well, what are you talking about? That's how you are critical of stuff. Well, it is, but also, what do you know? Like, that's the first thing that comes to my mind. If you come into this job, even if you have experience, if you don't have experience, and you start saying, it is so stupid that we do blah, 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 I'd be like, well, in what world do you have the knowledge to make that decision if this is stupid or not? A lot of times it may be stupid, but a lot of times you might be taking knowledge of a different circumstance or a different industry or a different norm and then improperly putting it on the fire service. So for the fire service, it might be completely appropriate, industry standard, justified, time-tested, tried and true, but it's just foreign to you, so you think it's dumb. Bad mentality, first of all, like bad mindset, but I understand it. If I had to offer one quick tip to the 0 to 5 year people and probationary people, even if you're highly critical of something, even if you came from another job and you know that what this department is doing is dumb, legitimately dumb, or outdated, or misguided, or whatever, phrase your criticism as a question and use that as an opportunity to get more information of why your department does it that way. Yes, it might be different than the way your old department did it or the way you've seen other departments in the world do it, but it might be the only way for right now anyways for the department you're talking about or you're in. Now, this becomes especially dangerous if you're a probationary person because you fall even more to the trap of like, well, what do you know? Like, first of all, if you're on probation and you're pointing out everything that's wrong with your department, I would tell you to find another department. Like, yes, every single department has its issues and every single department has its evolution to go through. And some things take a lot longer than others, right? But if you're on probation and you're deciding if you want this job or not, and you're already picking out problems and you're not in any position to solve them, or you're not even offering solutions, you're just throwing rocks, I'd be like, you probably shouldn't work here. Because if you think this is the only problem or thing you're gonna find that you don't like, you're woefully mistaken. And also, you got no leverage, no knowledge, and no real ability to fix it right now. So I'd rather not listen to you complain about the department that wants to pay you a bunch of money right now. Now, that's just my feeling, right? I know other people feel the other way. But it's a trap that you can fall into as a probationary person of like, I got this old salty crew. All they do is rag on the chief and how stupid things are and how bad stuff is, and I'm going to do that too. Avoid that trap, man, because you're not those old salty people. You don't have the relationships with the chief that those guys have or the experience of the department evolving in front of you like those guys have. So you're going to get stuck in a pretty bad spot where you just look like a 220 or an Ike. And for those of you that don't know, a 220, gosh, I messed that up. A 220 is someone who's been on for 2 years and acts like they got 20 on. And an Ike is an I know everything. So no matter what you say to this person, they're like, I know, I got that. I know everything. So you go ahead and steal those, use those. Credit me when you call someone it. Take a picture of them and be like, this is the Ike in my department. That'd be pretty funny. But that's what you run the risk of. Man, this is going to be difficult to do while I'm talking. I told you I don't do this often enough to be good at it, this rear wheel business. Let's do it like this, and like this. So phrase your criticisms as a question and gain the knowledge of why your department does something that way, regardless of how smart you think you are or how right you think you are or how wrong you think the department is, because quite honestly, you don't know if they're right or wrong because you don't have the information to base that decision off of, okay? And I think it should be that way for like 0 to 5 years because it's very hard to exist in the fire department with less than 5 years on. It's a totally different atmosphere, a totally different environment. There's different rules, there's different dynamics. And yeah, I know it's all people, and it's all like, well, he's just a person. You shouldn't be acting like this. Yeah, I get that, but he does. And these people do, and our admin works like this. And so you have to get used to that stuff. And until you got about 5 years on, and you've kind of been through the ringer, or you've gotten in trouble, or you've seen people deal with situations and how they handle them in your department, I don't think you have the knowledge to make an accurate gripe about where you're working. If you make it through probation and you get off probation, then you start griping, that's even worse. You can be like, well, you chose to work, you actively decided to work here over the past year. We gave you plenty of opportunities to not. Nobody kidnapped you and made you work here. If you got all these problems, I wish you just wouldn't. Now, if you're in the older category, older being like 10, 15, 20 plus years, and you've fallen into the trap of being a complainer and being someone who is highly critical of your department, if you have any sort of leadership in your organization, they're going to say, well, what do you want to do about it? And that's where you get to either decide that you're going to be an asset to the department or looked at as a pest and probably dismissed whenever you have an actually good idea. There's several people I work with that have been a pest for so long and a thorn to the admin for so long and gotten in the way of so many things that when they do have a good idea, it's discounted almost immediately because no one wants to hear it, and no one wants to hear it, especially from them. And they also know that all this person is doing is bringing up problems. And yeah, we know that's a problem. What's your solution? It goes back to the last episode where I was like, yeah, we know that the fire service is out of shape and has a lack of mechanical ability. Now what? Well, that's what that individual turns into. It's like, oh, great, he's got another problem he's not going to do anything about. Cool. And he's also really good at throwing up like these false flags of like, I told him they should just do this, and his solution is just off the wall ridiculous, right? I told him it was just as easy as increasing our budget by $3 million. If we just do that and staff 5 more ambulances, we'd have no problems. Well, thanks. You might as well tell us we should like fly to Mars and colonize that as District 9. So you can very easily fall into making your criticisms fall on deaf ears, depending on how you've decided to complain about things in the past. I think it's important to keep in mind that like the problems that you think are big, right, at your level, at the street level, probably aren't on the radar of the admin. And remember that you might have a lot of gripes with the way the admin is now, but they weren't always like that. Like very few people got hired as battalion chiefs or captains or assistant chiefs or chiefs. Very few people get like lateraled in from nowhere or get out of the academy and become a chief or battalion chief, right? Try to remember that they got to those positions by either pointing out things that needed to be fixed and actually fixing them, or being the person who was like willing to put themselves on a limb and be vulnerable enough to get promoted, trying to change things, trying to improve the department, blah, blah, blah. That's where they came from. They're probably in the same position you are now, noticing all these problems, but as you climb the ranks, those problems fade away and new ones come up. And so you might be like, well, we have all these problems, but admin doesn't care because I've been telling them for years about how bad the mattresses are, right? Admin's like, we need to worry about staffing and safer grants and getting our SCBAs replaced to make sure everybody has a thermal imager. I'm sorry for your mattresses. That's your level. I'm on a different level. And so it's easy to throw rocks at them for not caring about our problems because our problems aren't their problems. You might say like, well, all of our problems are their problems. Well, all of our problems are somebody's problems, not necessarily the chiefs and not necessarily who you want their problem to be. So listen, those are my couple little, did I even give a tip for the 10 to 15 year plus guy? Be ready to be involved. If you're going to complain at 10 to 15 years plus and you have any sort of leadership in your organization, get ready to get involved, or at least have an idea of what a realistic solution could be. That's my advice to you guys. If you just want to push at the table, like I'm fine with that, but just understand that after so many episodes of that, like nobody's going to watch that rerun anymore. And so it might be easy for you to do, and you might get a few laughs, and you might get a few nodding heads like, yep, it's still a problem. You're right. I wish it would change. This has been a problem for the 20 years I've been here. Like, oh yeah, it sure is. But it doesn't really do anything for anybody. It may even negatively impact the newer members below you because you're just instilling the fact that like the admin doesn't care. It's us versus them. They've lost sight of what's important. But like I said, what's important to you does not necessarily mean it's important to them. Short one today. We're in the summer slump here, guys, so I'm making these quick. I'm doing stuff I want to do. I'm experimenting with some new things. I did get some good suggestions. Apparently there was some hullabaloo down there in Texas that I need to pay attention to with some maydays being called and some accountability stuff. So I'm going to look into that for next week, because that's a lot of what I want to do here with this thing. We've had the battalion chief from Highland Park on. If you remember, they had their 4th of July parade shooting a few years ago, 2 years ago to last week. So there's absolutely room in this platform for tactics and strategy discussions, as well as lifestyle leadership, stuff like that. And of course, as I'm standing here in the garage gym, the health and fitness aspect of it is like the backbone. It's where it came from. So that's always going to have a presence, right? If you like the show or anything, or watching me talk about tires, share the episode. I really want to keep growing this thing. I don't want to feel like all I do is ask you guys for coffee money, so I'm not going to this week, but if you want to, go ahead. But I'd rather have you guys share this episode if there's an idea that catches your ear, or if you're like, yeah, that guy needs to shut up, and I'm going to have Chris tell him to shut up because I'm sick of hearing him bitch about everything, and this episode does that. Cool, I'm down with that. But let me know what you think. There's also a contact form on the website, 4thshiftfirefighter.com, or you can always find me on Instagram at 4thshiftfirefighter, number 4TH Shift Firefighter. All right, I got to get my padded underwear on and my goofy looking socks on and ride to the pool. Thanks for hanging out, guys. Thanks for being part of the 4th Shift. Keep on working towards being more capable and durable on the job and away from it. And we'll talk to you soon. Be a 4th Shift Firefighter.